So welcome everybody to Making in Uncertain Times Lightning Talks. My name is Caitlin Brown. I am the Site Support Committee Chair for New Jersey Makers Day this year. And we are extra excited about this event because we are co-sponsoring it with the New Jersey Association of School Librarians. So it is so exciting to see so many school librarians on this call. And of course, right now especially, we're thinking of our school librarians. So thanks for all that you do, and thank you for being here. Before we get started, there are a couple of brief announcements I want to go over. By being here today, you are earning entries into the New Jersey Makers Day 2021 Incubator Sweepstakes. So that is a new initiative that we are doing this year. So if your organization is a registered New Jersey Makers Day site, by engaging with our network in various ways, which includes attending professional development, you can earn entries for a grand prize of a $1,000 gift card for your library. So we are very excited that this is something we're able to offer our sites. I will put the link for that survey tracker in the chat. So if you fill out that link, say that you attended this professional development, you can start earning entries for your site. So we're very excited about that. If you are not a registered New Jersey Makers Day site, maybe you saw this announcement through NJASL and wanted to see what it was all about, it is not too late to register your site. We love school libraries at New Jersey Makers Day, and we would love to see what creative ways you come up with to be involved this year especially. It's going to be a challenging year and it might look a little bit different, but New Jersey Makers Day is so much more than just the one-day event, and that has been especially emphasized to us this year as the big in-person events kind of went away. So by registering for New Jersey Makers Day, you get access to the rest of our professional development opportunities, and we have a packed calendar this year. You get access to communications directly from us as an organization. You get access to things like our sweepstakes and our mini grants program. So if you are not registered, definitely consider it. We hope that we will sell you at this great session today. Let me put that link in the chat as well. I mentioned our mini grants program. I do want to make sure I highlight that the applications are open now, and we are giving out $500 mini grants to sites this year. The application is very easy. It's all in one PDF on our website. I will also put that link in the chat. So you just have to fill out that PDF. Applications are due December 11th. We are particularly excited this year to see all the new and innovative ideas that you come up with in the face of uncertain times. Maybe we'll get some ideas from this session. So with kind of all of those housekeeping announcements out of the way, we are very excited to get started with our lightning talks. Unfortunately, the first presenter on our schedule is unable to make it. So we are going to jump ahead to Natasha, and she will present for us.
Can you hear me? Okay, fantastic. If I share my screen, let me see. Oh, I think it will work. Well, I guess I'll do a little intro first when you can see my face. Hi, everyone. My name is Natasha Zerny. I have been working on a bunch of maker-related things for about 6 years now. My main focus has been designing kits for maker-type events. And today I want to share with you a story about one of the big projects that I've been working on and the effect that it's had on me. So I'm going to share my screen now. Okay, I hope you can see that. And I hope that I can, yes, I can. Okay, so my story. So as I was a young girl, I was one of those crafty girls who loved pink, loved glitter, loved all of those things, but my parents owned a computer store. So I was influenced a lot by watching the guys in the back repairing the computers, but I wasn't quite invited to, be explained how they worked or anything. It was just kind of off to the side. And many of you are familiar with Maker Faire, right? I think I could get some like thumbs up or something. Maker Faire to me looked a lot like this, which is really cool tech, but really kind of in a masculine way. And I realized that my parents, when I was 8 years old, wouldn't bring me to Maker Faire because they would look at it and they would think it wasn't for me. So about 6-7 years ago, I decided to go to Maker Faire with a project that would make 8-year-old Natasha happy. So what would make me happy? And I came up with a criteria for my booth that I was going to do a project with some kids. So it had to be crafty and expressive. It had to be simple. It had to be inexpensive. Really quick, something that engages you and then you're off on your way. Something that's shareable, make you proud to have. And something that would combine crafts and technology so that we could start promoting this crossover and make it easy to do some projects that include both. So the project that I came up with were these little stackable paper flowers that would have an LED and it would end up being a pin. So I cut out hundreds of these flowers and then I thought, but wait a second, would the boys go for that? Because I was trying to solve like there's not so much girly stuff at Maker Faire, and I was like, okay, I will create something that I think the boys might like. So I did a bow tie. So like a bow tie was the formal wear play, and like flowers would be like a brooch. So I took it to Maker Faire and I did it with hundreds of makers the first time. And then I did 2 Kickstarters to get a whole bunch more made. And then I took it all across the country and I ended up going to over 20 Maker Fairs and doing the project with over 5,000 makers. So I have a huge amount of experience in micro interactions, like 5-minute interactions with makers. And what I wanted to share with you today is just some observational data. I didn't go at this like a science project. I went at this as just a person observing all of this. Ooh, let me see if I can go to the next thing. And one of the things that I noticed was that about 80% of the kids would go for their like gendered, expected gendered things. So like the boys would go for the bow tie and the girls would go for the flower. About 20% would do the opposite. So I decided to make a commitment to myself that I would ask every child, do you want a bow tie or a flower? I was going to make sure every child got exactly the same question so that they would have the opportunity to choose and I wouldn't be pushing my thoughts onto them, right? So what ended up happening? First off, more kids went the other way, right? They didn't do the gender expected thing. But one of the things that I observed, and this was across the country at every event, was some kid would say the unexpected thing and the parent would get aggressive at them. They would take them away from their table. They would turn their head towards them and say no. There was a lot of this pushback from the parents. And that made me sad because that was like my experience as a kid. But really what I was trying to do was just inspire the kids to make. So this is actually kind of the core of why I wanted to talk today is what was working was I was asking every kid to express to me what they wanted. And I think that right now we're doing a lot of virtual workshops and kids are separated. And if they're having an experience where they're only having one adult with their, like in their ecosystem, there are a lack of role models that may align better with or allow them to express themselves or be more open to what they might say when they're presented with a question. So what I've been trying to do doing the workshop online now is just kind of continue with the opportunity of asking a bow tie or a flower, but also just trying to be super aware of any type of stereotype that I may be accidentally manifesting in what I'm doing, because we have less of an interaction. It's harder to have one-on-one interactions, and you may only have what a person looks like to you know, tell everything that you might need to know about them. So I think what I've been doing is just meditating on that, trying to be aware, trying to be focused on, you know, what these interactions are, and just a little bit critical of myself, reflecting on what I said to each kid after a workshop, to, you know, try to not be the person who's like single laning any kids. And the other thing that I wanted to just mention is throughout this whole process, I learned about my own bias coming out subconsciously, because one of the things that I would do is when I would ask the kids, do you want a bow tie or a flower? If there was a really girly girl, like she had a pink shirt on and like glitter all over or something, my mouth would not say the word tie. I would be like, would you like a bow or a flower? And I would be trying to say bow tie, but it would just drop off. Like my brain was pulling it, like excluding it. And I think that that's just one of those things that, as you know, my goal was one thing. It's just really like being aware of what the way that we're presenting ourselves, and you know what our own biases might be. So that was just like an interesting example, and I had to really be aware. So the things that work are providing the options, not asking, do you want this or this, but just even tell me what you would like. Let them choose, and be aware. And this is just kind of to be relevant now, because you know the stereotypes are just like oversimplified opinions of what you might think of someone, and that's not fair, and we're just going to be you need to be a little bit more aware. So yeah, that's what I wanted to share, and I hope that we can, you know, continue to work together to let any kid create without any of these boundaries around them. So that's my thought.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Does anyone have any questions for Natasha?
May I?
Sure.
Hey, Natasha.
Hey.
Good stuff. And I'm loving what I'm seeing behind you.
Oh yeah, my maker den, I guess you could call it.
So have you, I'm going to be speaking shortly, and of course my connection is with schools. Have you
Yeah.
made those kind of connections and gotten any kind of feedback, and anybody interested in integrating what you do into classrooms?
Just a little bit. I've had a lot of people get the kits, mostly libraries. I don't know if any official schools have done it yet. But yeah, I think that it's one way of like doing the project is just kind of doing like a pickup where you know the parents or the kids could stop by and pick up some materials. I see a lot of people doing like goodie bags and stuff for you know doing a workshop. So like, you know, sometime during this week stop by and pick up the stuff, and then at the end of the week there's the workshop. And I've led workshops, but I've also had people getting the kits to lead their own workshops. It's a fairly simple build, and it's honestly more about community building and letting the kids interact with each other in the Zoom in a less academic way, which has been a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I did have a whoopee cushion in one workshop, so that was the kids definitely wanted to have some fun.
Nice. Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, someone said they did it at Maker Faire. Woo! Yeah, Maker Faire, New York. Yeah. Oh. Oh, cool. Someone said that the boys were on board with the e-textile workshop. That's great. Oh, a passive activity for older students. I don't know if I've ever done it passively, just because they need to follow the instructions. I do have printed instructions, so you could have them be self-guided, absolutely. But I have done it for all ages. I actually did the like 21 and up event at Liberty Science Center once, and had a bunch of adults doing it, because everyone likes a blinky thing, you know? So that was a lot of fun too, because you know they got to play crafts for a night. Yeah. Well, so
Great. Thank you
Those
so
are my
much.
thoughts. Yeah.
That's awesome. I love what you had to say too about not putting the kids in a single lane. Like, don't single lane them. Kind of give them the freedom to explore that without boundaries. That's awesome.
Thanks.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Our next presenter is going to be Mark. Mark is going to talk about making remote learning authentic.
Can you hear me and see my screen? All right, all right. So that was awesome, Natasha. Thank you. I love following people who are awesome because hopefully those vibes will flow through. So I'm Mark Natanagara. I'm absolutely thrilled at this platform and this opportunity and just being a part of these lightning talks. I'm known to speak really quickly, so this is the perfect venue for me. I've been a science teacher, a principal, and a district administrator for the past 33 years. Most recently, I was the lead author of something called the Roadmap for Remote Digital Learning, which was commissioned by Sustainable Jersey, another wonderful organization. And this past fall, it was shared with all 700 New Jersey school districts by the Department of Education, primarily to help schools reopen, but also for the long-term idea of improving teaching and learning during these challenging times, which is what I'm here to speak about today. So as we're all painfully aware, for the last 9 months, all 120,000 New Jersey teachers and about 2 million students and their families have involuntarily become subjects in a global education experiment. It's emptied our classrooms. It's still going on today, one form or another, depending on the schools. And these school shutdowns have begged the question, how do we engage students when they're not in our classrooms? So when it comes to student motivation, we have made some headway in the past few decades. We've gone from passive learning techniques like lectures, Bueller, dittos, and multiple choice quizzes. But we've also moved towards more authentic practices like active inquiry, discovery, and problem-based learning. And it's with these pedagogies and things like them, they come by different names, that are pre-K to 12 students. And yes, we do this kind of work with pre-K students, but they work like they're med students, archaeologists, and detectives. So authentic learning, the thing we're talking about, is it has several characteristics. I've kind of narrowed them down to 5 over the past 30 years. Sometimes they change, but this is the essence of what I mean by authentic. Authentic lessons are experiential, so students don't just watch or listen to something, they do. Students are in charge of their own learning. They identify problems, they come up with and iterate different solutions, they adjust the pace, they select the tools and materials that they like. Authentic learning has to be relevant. It has to connect kids to important issues in their communities and around the planet. And authentic learning is cross-disciplinary. So math, science, health, speaking are organically integrated because that's how the world works. But it's not easy to teach this way. It's not easy to convert things that you've done before into this. So why should we? And here are the reasons why. Authentic learning develops critical thinking skills. It develops empathy. It develops self-regulation. Basically, kids become their own teachers and learn how to manage working with others and collaborate. And there are other equally important transferable skills. By transferable skills, meaning they both can go across different concept areas, but also they're of lifelong benefit. But I knew for the first many years of doing this kind of learning, both in my classroom as a science teacher and in promoting it as an administrator, there was something missing that I couldn't quite identify. And like Natasha, about 12 years ago, I attended the Second World Maker Faire in Corona Park, Queens. And I knew in the first 10 minutes, just seeing the people there and seeing what was going on, that this is what we needed in schools. Well, actually, maybe not what I showed here. We don't necessarily need these things in schools, but in fact, I so fell in love with it that I created and ran the Jersey Shore Maker Fest with my former colleague, Tiffany Lucy, and we drew over 14,000 people to our little town over 5 years. So we knew right away that we were onto something. And what we love about making, what I love about making, is that it brings these other pieces to learning: imagination, creativity, sharing, innovation, particularly hands-on, and a word we don't often use in education. Well, I shouldn't say we. I certainly do. And that's fun. So of course, I believe that making could be just for expression and enjoyment. But to me, as a lifelong educator, it represented a possibly better way to engage kids while they were learning. Now, if engagement was a problem in a live classroom, it is certainly more problematic during remote learning. Students need making and authentic learning now more than ever. But the challenge I'm dealing with teachers and administrators is how can we do that while they're at home? Well, the good thing is that making is an ideal approach because it's a mindset. It's a way of thinking and doing things. Because there's no one kind of makerspace, you can do it anywhere, in any school, any classroom, even in your kitchen. And because there's no one maker method, anyone can do it. So the way I preach authentic active learning is as part of a lesson, we look at real life situations. The students define a problem they see and care about, and then they brainstorm and they usually make or build some kind of solution. So that's problem-based learning. They identify a problem and they iterate solutions to it. For example, one of the tasks we've done is how will restaurants rebound after the pandemic? And it's really great to see how kids define that problem in their own way. For some, it's a safety issue. For others, it's just getting back in the habit. For some, it's how do we make restaurants more interesting again? How do we get families to go back? So the next couple of slides are just looking at how students can do that kind of learning, how they can create, express, and share their work. So some teachers are having students make it home. And to do that, you have to either decide to use common household items to build model or full-size structures, to build things like Rube Goldberg machines with rubber bands and cardboard, or even in science classes to have them explore a safe chemical reaction. Like in this case, it's just vinegar and baking soda, but doing something with that, defining the problem. And others are sending home, they're making, or like Natasha does, they're purchasing or having others make these reusable kits. So breadboards, wires, and LEDs are a very cheap way to send home with kids to have them create and learn electronics. The second strategy is in place of physical experiences, there are virtual environments and simulations where students can explore and manipulate and build digital objects. So they can use computer coding, games like Minecraft, there's Erasmus for augmented reality, there are tons of physics and other science simulators, and things like 360-degree virtual tools. So here's an art lesson, taking kids into the Van Gogh Museum in the Netherlands, having them explore the space and doing a couple of things, looking at how Van Gogh was influenced by the artists in this room. And so they can walk around and look at the paintings, but also thinking about how gallery owners design displays and then designing their own display for a set of objects for maximum, for a narrative and for kind of maximum exposure to those and maximum understanding of those. Another strategy is, of course, that students can make and design everything from architectural drawings to posters, flyers, comics, and books using digital design tools like SketchUp and Canva. And then there are tons of audio, visual, and animation tools like Clips for iPhone, which is one of my new favorites, and Flipgrid for students to create podcasts and videos of their work. Like I remember students doing like an interview in Spanish, creating a cartoon story, a commercial, or one of my favorites is when high schoolers create lessons like a math lesson for a younger grade, for like a third grade class, and sending it on. So in lightning summary, I feel kids should be leaving school each day. We should be leaving school each day and at graduation wanting to know and experience more. We should be becoming lifelong learners. Learning should be challenging, it should be creative, it should be personal, it should be meaningful, and it should be motivating. And that's what I feel that making brings to our schools and our communities. So thanks so much. Thanks to Doug Baldwin. I know he's on the call here. Doug's always been my connection to New Jersey Makers Day. Thanks to all those amazing school librarians and all the makers out there who are providing free experiences like this. Again, one of the things that I think impresses teachers and students the most is when they latch onto the maker mindset, they understand just how generous the people are who do them. And I think makers should be making money. And so I appreciate makers who are both doing free things and who are out there providing really great content for us. So that's my lightning talk, and are there any questions?
Anyone? Questions for Mark? No quiet. We'll have the chance for more questions later too. So if Nothing comes to mind right now. And then as soon as, oh, question from Doug in the chat. How do you see authentic learning in the context of remote learning spaces?
Hey, Doug. Yeah, so this is, I've actually started doing some trainings at Ocean County College for teachers because, you know, it's very challenging because of the pandemic. It's very challenging because of the technology. It's very challenging because of equity issues. And so it's kind of been tossed aside just for survival reasons, is really engaging kids with this kind of authentic learning. You know, we're going through our curriculum and thinking, well, you know, I got to simplify this. I can't do a lab experiment. We're going to have to just watch a lab experiment, or I can't have kids really collaborating together in small groups or doing centers, but you can. And what's amazing when I work with teachers, you put a bunch of teachers, and particularly librarians, in a room and you pose a problem, you will find solutions. So some of what I presented today are these solutions where we can get kids to collaborate in breakout rooms. We can get them to be off grid. You know, one of the things we really promote is trying to make sure kids aren't staring at the screen all day, even for 4 hours. That's just too long, particularly for a younger child. So, you know, presenting an issue, and then letting them go off grid and letting them explore that sort of stuff, and then coming back on and reflecting and asking. You know, I really don't care what the content is. As a science teacher, I used to say to kids, particularly, I got to say, when I first started teaching science, it was especially girls who would come in and say, either I hate science or I'm no good at science. And my response after my first terrible year of teaching, as we all had, it was really, the fact that we're learning science is irrelevant. What we're going to learn is an understanding of the world. We're going to learn processes and ways to look at things and solve problems. And that's good for anything. So one of the things we try to do in remote learning is not just have these kids do these kind of activities, but try to have teachers work together so kids see this kind of organic connection between the subject areas. So maybe doing a project together, that the art teacher looks at the presentation piece and the design piece, and the English teacher looks at how well it was written, and the science teacher maybe looks at the concepts behind it. So there are tons of strategies that really, frankly, we should be using even when we're live and in person, but that are especially important in these remote settings. And it's, you know, teachers are slowly doing it. They're slowly realizing, like, I can do this, I can survive this, and my kids need to be more engaged, and they need to be doing, you know, more of this rigorous kind of thinking that problem-based learning and authentic learning does. And they're getting some good, really good results. And the kids are, you know, you have to keep things different every day. You know, remote, even this, if we were to do a problem-based project every week or so, kids would get tired of it. So variety is super important. Different strategies are super important. You know, this is my cat who would like me to get off the Zoom very soon. You know, we try to create this kind of variety where you can use one strategy this week and one technique this week and another one. Now, that having been said, it's important, especially for secondary students, you know, at the middle school and high school level, to make sure that when they go from teacher to teacher, there is some consistency in the experience. It's very difficult for them, you know, oh, you're using Meet, but you're using Zoom, or using this tool for collaboration and using this tool. So that's another piece that we, you know, in Toms River, we decided when 2 weeks before the shutdown came about, February, March, we said, we're going to make the technology as simple as possible, and then we can grow from there. So I do think teachers are ready to grow, and yeah, it's usually a dog that interrupts. My cat thinks it's a dog, so every time I'm on Zoom, he comes over here. I know that was a long-winded explanation, Doug, but it's happening. This authentic learning is coming back. People are realizing the value of it, particularly in these settings, and they're looking for any possible way to motivate kids to just stay on target and to be interested and excited. I mean, ultimately, like, what's our ultimate goal in education is that kids they'll be motivated to learn once the Zoom, you know, once their camera's off and once the day's over, and that kids will they'll email or text you at 5 o'clock at night and say, hey, I just had a question. Do you have a resource on this? And it's happening. It's not widespread, but, you know, even like, you know, making was 10 years ago. I didn't know what making was. I didn't know what the maker mindset was until I went to Makers Day. I said, oh, there's a name for this. So I don't care if we call it authentic learning, active learning, but it's going to take a while. It's a movement to get back to letting kids take charge of their learning and letting them explore things and discover, rather than what's very tempting for us. You know, we've replaced the row of desks with rows in Zoom, and we have to break out of that and think of different ways for kids to work on their own and work together.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Mark.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. So our next speaker is one of Mark's colleagues. We are going to hear from Tiffany.
Hey, how are you? My name is Tiffany Lucy. I am the supervisor of Ed Tech from Toms River Regional Schools and ongoing colleague of Dr. Natsunagara. I am so very fortunate to have had this long collaboration. And so I had a pretty good sense in my head of what he was going to cover. So I was careful not to do that. And so I usually talk more about making, but in this case, I felt like I should talk a little bit more about student engagement and what that looks like. Some of the work that we've done is we've sent out questionnaires to students both as we were dealing with the pandemic as well as this fall to both students and teachers in different populations. But so I'm going to share some of the results of our findings of things that were most engaging to them, which, you know, certainly when you look at student engagement and how you define it, and I guess I'll start the share screen. Everyone sees it says engage. Yes. Yes. Okay, good. You know, in the voice of Jean-Luc Picard, of course, engage, my very best, is that, you know, we really want to see how we can keep students moving. And certainly I think we are all makers who are on this call. So I didn't feel like I was going to go that way. So some of the things that we looked at is really, you know, looking at that classroom practice and looking at understanding by design and starting with the course curriculum and the state standards and your objectives, and really developing your instructional practices around what you hope to see your students be able to do at the end of each unit. And so really, you know, tying right into Mark's deep work into authentic learning is looking at, you know, what will that product be, and starting with the end in mind. So that as you work with your students, you're all working towards something collaboratively. And, you know, like our school is working on an A-B schedule. So, you know, Monday is an A day, Tuesday is a B day, Wednesday, Thursday, A-B again, and then Friday is full virtual. And so, you know, some of the things we've been really talking to our teachers about is, you know, where do you want them to be? And how do you manage that time and flow? And so if you consider that Friday day when you have the full virtual and everyone is in front of you, you can really lay out the coming week in a beautiful way where they can engage with you and you can say, okay, great. So, you know, if these are our goals and objectives, where do we want to be? You know, so here's 2 activities that are going to be hands-on and you're going to really look forward to coming into school to do, right? They're going to be collaborative in some way, you know, certainly socially distanced and everything else, but you really want them to have a reason and a purpose for taking that leap of faith to be in your building. And then having the work that's at a distance, you know, invite them into your classroom virtually and then take that instruction and introduce what they need to be doing and remind them from Friday, you know, okay, so here's the video you're going to do, here's what you're going to work on at home so that when I see you in person, this is really purposeful. And so that asynchronous learning is a hard concept for teachers to wrap their heads around, but they're doing some pretty amazing things with it. And, you know, it's always going to be your goal to find those best tools and activities to help your students accomplish mastery. And this may not be the same for all children. You know, we really, really, really more now than ever have to be differentiating our instruction, you know, and it is really because you want that quality instruction. You want equity. You know, we talk about it. It's time to live it. And we have a chance where, like, our playing field has completely blown up what the classroom can look like and what we can do as instructional leaders to engage these kids. And so you want them highly interested and, yes, the F word, fun. So, you know, we typically look at tools and technology. And so, you know, certainly most people think that these are not technology, but Mark and I have a long history of considering, you know, everything from, you know, the screwdriver to the laptop as technology and things far beyond that. And then really looking at what are the tools that the students found most engaging and what about them was engaging. And so Screencastify is a free tool. It lets you record your screen and your video, and you know, it kind of looks like this, right? With your face in it and what you're doing. And so We found our teachers and our students really liked content that was created by their own teacher as opposed to something from a third party, and that they, felt like that was way more connective for them. Pear Deck allows you to do, take your Google slide deck and make it really interactive as you go. So that's been a great tool. We've enjoyed that. Our teachers liked it so much that when one of the supervisors came to me a couple of weeks ago and said, is there any chance we can buy this? And I said, well, I looked at the pricing. This is the pricing. We don't have the money. I said, but you're not the first or last person who said this to me. So why don't we meet with all of the supervisors and see if we can cobble something together? And they did. So we now have Pear Deck for the rest of the school year at a program, and it allows you to embed into your Google slide deck interactive embedded questions. You can draw responses, you can work on vocabulary, you can do multilingual stuff with it, which is beautiful. It'll do some translations. It brings in audio in a really clean way. And I think that having multiple touch points in any instructional practice, particularly virtually, is really important, that you're getting that feedback and that the kids aren't just zoning out on you. And this is one of many ways you can do that. There's another tool called Nearpod, but it's much more intensive on the network and things like that. So I tend to steer clear of it, but I do love Nearpod a little more if you have a really robust infrastructure and your families have that as well. We love Jamboard. Jamboard is now fully integrated into Google Meet in the enterprise version. If you haven't tried it, I do have a nice little tiny URL if you guys want to hop out there with me. If you would navigate to tinyurl.com/trengage, I don't know if I'm going crazy here asking you to hop to another link, but I am going to escape. And I'm going to click on it, and I'm hoping to meet you out there. And I'm also going to take that link and put it in our chat. Actually, Mark, can you throw it in the chat for me? Thank you. tinyurl.com/trengage. And then you can hop right in and you just go out on the left-hand side and you can grab a sticky note. And so tell me, how do you engage children in learning? And I know that we're not all necessarily classroom instructors, but we are all certainly teachers in our own way if we're here. And you just click on a sticky note and then you can write on it. You can change the colors. If you want, you can bring in a picture. Sure, yes. Cats always drive instruction, don't they? Student engagement. So feel free. I see many of you are in here. You do have to make sure that when you grab the sticky note that you click save after you do your writing. They'll usually pop up in the left, and then you can kind of drag it around wherever you want. Make and take kits engaging in hands-on learning, absolutely. You can also add text if you want to with a little text box out to the left. Yeah, you'll find that as you make your little sticky notes, you'll just need to drag them around. So make, take, and make. Develop relationships with my students. Yeah, that really is the key. That is by far the deepest. And I always say the smartest person in the room is the room. That was not my original statement, but I stole it and I'll keep it. Science story time, sure. And listening to them and making connections. And someone else loves Jamboard, and hey, Flipgrid, that's next on my list, not far away, and other interactive tech tools. So, when you look at this, there's certainly the hands-on piece as well as all of these tech pieces, and kind of trying to find that balance where, what's right for one student may not be right for another, but we've really gone far using tools like choice boards, where students have choices of products. And so as long as they're mastering the standard and showing you that evidence of their authentic learning, whether they're going to make you a slide deck or a Jamboard, or they're going to bring you a video, or they're going to make something and have a picture of it, those are all pretty extraordinary. And so I'm going to now pop back out of this, but feel free to play. I put it there for you to do exactly that. And thank you for coming with me. And so, of course, yeah, Flipgrid. Flipgrid is fabulous. You're able to just take it, and if you haven't used it before, it is free. It's now owned by Microsoft. So if you looked at it a long time ago, as I did, it used to be something where you had all kinds of limitations on how long and how many and how it was structured, and it's gotten much, much easier. You can also do screencasts with it. You can export them pretty easily. And it's free, which is another one of free and fun, I guess. And Flipgrid, hey, I have 3 great F words. They're all legit. So some tips and strategies for classroom teachers is flip instruction when you can. Know that students do prefer live instruction, and they prefer videos made by their teachers for asynchronous instruction. And we need to, of course, give them a reason to come into the building. And of course, you know, in Mark's words, authentic learning is really mission critical. You know, and you always have to work with what you have, but, you know, just like one of our notes in the Jamboard said, you know, send home what you can, right? If you can do some make and take, if you can put together packets for your students, you know, sometimes Title IV funding is available for that in your building. So if you need to go shake a tree, sometimes money falls from that one. It's my favorite tree to shake. And we really want to encourage open-ended and authentic learning. I'm going to admit someone to the meet. And let's see. Thank you so much. I'm happy to share this slide deck. I'll put a link to it out in the chat. I've also added some resources on the back end. Jamboard has some great templates and things like that. I have Tom's Rivers K-12 Learning Handbook, the TR Safe Return that Mark was responsible for. I have some YouTube stuff. I have some supplemental resources for teachers and for families, and some of them are multilingual. Feel free to lift what you'd like. And even more, the Digital Learning Roadmap by Mark, Google Teacher Learning Center, all kinds of great stuff. So thank you.
Thank you so much. That was great. Does anyone have any
you.
questions for Tiffany?
My pleasure. Are there any questions for the good of the group? Oh, good. Any suggestions for shy teens? I'm really finding that shy teens, so one of our big issues is certainly, you know, so many people like to turn off their camera, and as teachers, we want to see the faces. And my Twitter handle is @Tiffany Lucy, spelled just like my name. But the shy teens, that's allowing them those multiple means of expression. So whether they're making the Flipgrid, I find some students are willing to record themselves rather than do the public speaking component and sharing. They love the chat. They're way more comfortable in a chat versus a verbal interaction on a Google Meet. So we're finding, and also the types of questions that you ask are really important. So if you're asking open-ended questions that are encouraging them to think versus those yes/no questions, you know, it's convergent versus divergent questioning. And Mark actually makes me laugh very hard, but one of the things that we're working on, yes, is we're doing a hackathon. And on the hackathon, I'm sorry, give me 1 second to mute. So the hackathon, we are actually doing a, I'm sorry, it's very noisy here right now all of a sudden. Give me a second.
Tiff, I could not hear any distracting noises.
Okay, good. All right. So I lost track completely, but I think that, you know, this is really virtual life. And when we're looking at engaging these kids, you know, allowing them different ways and some flexibility in building that community. Also, getting students to work in small groups and breakout rooms has been really helpful, because sometimes they're more comfortable speaking with their peers rather than working, you know, with the whole group, you know, and a lot of times you'll get even better resources that way and responses. Yeah, absolutely. Be judicious with your camera on the requirements. You know, because also it's an equity issue with the cameras on and off. You know, students may or may not have stuff in the background or life happening in the background. I'm part of a group that, you know, a teacher shared yesterday, actually, that there was a naked parent. Oh, good, right? Could you imagine? Just for a moment, but, you know, we are peering into their homes in a way that we never have before. And, you know, it's important for us to be aware and cognizant of, you know, what the limitations may or may not be for these kids, and to be respectful of them. And often that's a conversation, and you can do that one-on-one offline as well. You know, because what's right for one may not be right for all. Yeah, smart, Sandy. I agree. Leave it up to them. All right. Any other questions? Are there the disengagement of students with the, so Doug asked a good question. Are there those concerns in cases where there's disengagement from students, and perhaps ways to avoid that if the camera is flexible? And so that's why a tool like Nearpod and having multiple touch points or interactions with students throughout the instructional practice, whether, you know, you're putting up a Jamboard or you're having them record something, those are all ways that you're confirming that they're interacting with you in the content. And so that's how you're getting that student engagement and being able to bring them into the conversation in a way that works for them. Yes, communicating in emojis is awesome. And thank you, Doug. My pleasure. Any other questions for the good of the group? Well, thank you.
Thank you so much. And like I said before, we will have more time after all of our lightning talks to have more of a conversation too. So if you think of a burning question for Tiffany or any of our other presenters, in the meantime, definitely jot it down, and there'll be more chances for questions later. So our next presenter is going to be Carrie Ann. So I'm going to turn it over.
Hi, good evening. Can everyone hear me? Good. Thank you so much. First of all, it's been a pleasure to hear the plethora of differences on what you're doing in your own fields. My field is a little different. My name's obviously Carrie Ann O'Connor. I have my own business, and it's called the Learning Exchange Education Consulting. So basically, in a nutshell, I do a variety of things just like a teacher would. I wear a lot of hats. I provide educational workshops for parents, for community members, for children. And one of the side things that I do with the business is that I go ahead and I teach kids to want to become an engineer. I expose them to items they may not have heard of or have been aware of in their classroom setting. So as we all understand, whether you're a parent, whether you're an administrator or you're a teacher, you know that some of the students do leave a classroom for STEM or for a gifted and talented program. So when I was a teacher for 17 years, I surveyed students, and I always felt horrible for the students that never left the classroom to go for a gifted and talented program. And they always felt that they were the forgotten ones. So my decision to move into my own business and create educational items and go to schools, go to libraries, do the homeschooling community, and also work with the Scouts. What I realized is that kids are missing in the school systems, not in everyone's school systems, but the hands-on approach. a lot of you said the worksheets, you know, especially now we are in that digital age. So just so you know, I'm not going to share my screen with you. I like face-to-face connectivity, and that's okay if I see a picture, I see your smiling faces. So I don't want to share anything, because my job when I come into schools or the libraries is to be very natural and keep it as if we're having a communication, because with technology, sometimes kids don't have that communication face-to-face. More of it's texting, it's, you know, looking at a camera. So anyway, so moving forward, so my job is to teach children to want to go ahead and experience what it's like to be an engineer. I call it a kid engineer. So through my programs, I offer kids the way to see what engineering looks like in the 21st century. Obviously, we are living the times, just like our schools try to move ourselves forward in that dialogue to be present and not to, you know, repeat what we might have learned in the past, but we tweak it a little more to make it current and updated, as we all do in general. My children and the students that I see for engineering, when I come to a library or any kind of facility, I come in with no idea on what these students are going to make. So basically, I follow the engineering design process, which is a 6-step phase. It's ask, imagine, create, design, create, improve, and test, and then improve again. So basically, it's like a 6 to 7 step where the children actually create a prototype. Now, a prototype is a testable model. With a bigger question in mind is that I pose to the students and the children real life problems that you and I probably have. So let me give you an example. So we're raking leaves. It's that season, or you have a leaf blower. So you rake leaves together. They're on the ground, but the problem is now you have a wheelbarrow next to you. You want to take those leaves and put them in the wheelbarrow, but you don't have a leaf blower, you don't have a tarp, you do not have any gloves in order to scoop up, and you really don't want to scoop up the leaves and put them in the wheelbarrow with your bare hands, correct? So I have the students devise a better way to get those leaves from the ground into the wheelbarrow using constraints, meaning I don't show the children what they need to do. I don't give them rules, but I give them like 4 or 5 models of what they might need to do. And I'll give you an example. So like I said, this is what I would show the kids. So these constraints, they might be very simple. They're just rules that they need to follow and to ensure that what they create as their end result is the prototype that meets these criteria. Okay, I start with a background explaining to the children, like for example, and this is, I'll show you what I just did the last time. So it's the fall season, and I do show them these that I've printed out. And the reason I don't put it on my background screen, these kids, I believe, stare at a screen so much. So my job is to, I don't want to say entertain them, but my job is to continuously make them follow me to keep them focused and stay on task. So I'll show them, obviously, you can rake leaves with a rake, okay? You can have someone, maybe someone in your family has a leaf blower. You have, once again, the tarp that you could bring the leaves forward in after you rake them. And then we start to talk about, okay, people sometimes rake their leaves into bags. Now we get into something more scientific. When we talk about the leaves, where do they go after that? So usually you could rake them in your backyard into a pile in the woods if you have woods. If not, some of the towns come by with leaf collection where they are able to take the leaves. But then we start to talk about what happens when the leaves are taken to the dump, the leaf dump. What starts to produce a gas, which actually is more of a pollutant. So I take them through scientific phases in order to create this prototype. Now, the funniest thing is the prototype is actually safe. The materials they're using, they're not anything sharp, anything that is going to be dangerous. As someone said before, they are household products that they can find, such as the recyclables, the toilet tissue tubes, the paper towel tubes. So what I do for the libraries and anywhere I go, especially now with COVID, I create these engineering supply kits. And what that does is I give them in a large Ziploc bags, tons of materials inside that they can start with. And it's, of course, being COVID friendly. It says I've used a mask, I've used gloves, seal them up, drop them off to the facility wherever I'm going to teach that day in advance. And the kids are able to bring from their homes, if they're present in school that day, or if they're doing this virtually, they're able to add items to their bags. So meaning I can no longer, because of COVID, I can no longer collect the paper towel tubes like I used to and lay them out as materials for the children. So I have to be a little more creative. So I create these starter kits and I drop them off. And then when I get to the place, and if I can't get to a place such as a library because of restrictions, I do it via Zoom through my personal account. So when I get there, we talk about, you know, this specific problem. Let's take raking leaves, okay? I pose a problem. I don't ask for the kids to give me any background. I don't have a solution for them. I explain the different steps of the engineering design process in order to tap into their different learning styles and make that real life connection, that link apparent. I do a lot of cross-curricular connections, and it allows for creativity, hands-on experiences, and exploration. And what they create is an innovative prototype. So I walk them through the stages. Now I see all your faces on here, or your icons, or just your names. So basically, if you were on a call, a Zoom call with me, I would tap into, sometimes I have anywhere from 6 kids up until 35 kids on a Zoom screen. I would tap in and speak to every single student individually. They would create, once they have an idea on what they want to do, they would create a design. They actually create a design on a piece of printer paper. They hold it up to the screen. I talk to them about it, ask them a couple of questions, and then I send them off to start to create with their materials. I then jump to the next person, do the same thing. So basically, if I have 35 kids on, I'm totally differentiating, because, you know, as a teacher, for those of you who are teachers, or even as a parent who has more than one sibling, you realize that kids process at different rates. So they're constantly, some are fast, some are slower. I could have a kid say, I'm done within 5 minutes, but we work for 2 hours straight on our meetings. So I have to differentiate. I have to make sure that I have challenges for those that are finished, those who are struggling, because especially on a Zoom, I can't reach in and help the children. And sometimes their parents just have them on the call and they're in a different room. Sometimes I have the pleasure of working with the parents. They work together. When I am in person, I always have the children work together, because an engineer never works alone. They usually have several children that they can work with that are in manageable time constraints, and they can bounce ideas off of. So basically, when the kids go through the entire engineering design process with me, when they create their prototype, they test it out. And I'm very careful in making sure when they test it out, there's a low frustration level in the children that I'm working with. So basically, they create a prototype, they test it out, and of course it doesn't work on the first try. They go back and improve it. And then they create, and they go back and improve, and they share. So basically, for our 2-hour time frame, I'm doing nothing but going back and forth, communicating with children. They're showing the prototypes, whether that's in person too. So when I go to the libraries, and the libraries have been fabulous for those that are open, they send me to the gazebo. If they have a gazebo on their premise, I go to the gazebo and we teach in there. I go up on hills. I go anywhere in their parking lot that it's, you know, roped off so it's safe. Because this is how I'm trying to bring that love of engineering to kids and get them excited. They work with mechanical engineers. They pretend they are, I should say. They're industrial engineers, they're structural engineers, They biomedical engineer. So we work in all different sciences because I take the big word of engineer and I break it down into manageable parts. So I always have a theme. I always have a problem they need to solve. And then from working on, they develop and build something that they feel is their own. And they have ownership over it. I don't have a model for them to see in front of them. And the children really enjoy that hands-on approach. It's a little different than a science class because these are testable questions, testable problems that they're working on, and they actually walk away with a structure. And the last one that I did with the raking of the leaves, finding a better way to scoop up leaves and put them in the wheelbarrow, the kids actually went outside and modeled how to do it. So it helps the kids actually go outside, but also do virtually if need to be. And it's been a total success. And I have to tell you that I think that one of the things that I'm really trying to share with everyone is that children need to be kids. It's great that we have all this technology, which I'm 100% for because I couldn't speak to all of you today. But I think they need to be kids. They need to learn that the things that we grew up with, crayons, you know, using a pencil, using scissors and tape, being able to create on their own with some constraints, some rules to follow, but also being able to use their imagination and not have someone tell them what's right and what's wrong, or there's only one way to do something. And I have to tell you, 2 hours, and I do it from preschool all the way to grades 12. And I can't get the kids off my Zoom meetings because they just want to stay. So it's very, it's a pleasure to work with the students and the children, and also obviously the teen population. But my love of engineering is carried through to hope that in their future, because they are our future, these are the jobs that are up and coming. If I can get them a little interested into some kind of field in engineering, because engineering is so large, the word, different principles and designs. If I can get them interested, who knows, maybe I did spark something that maybe they wouldn't have thought of in the past. So I'm sorry, I like to talk and I like to move around the screen and see who's watching. So that is exactly how I bring 21st century into libraries, schools, homeschools, scout programs, and also a way to get the kids constantly working, especially now that we are in a virtual world, for learning and understanding and teaching. Thank you so much. I appreciate this great opportunity, and I really am truly pleasured to have come on today to share my love of engineering.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being here. It's
Oh,
great.
you're welcome.
Message. Does anyone have any questions for Carrie Ann?
No question, but if I may, a comment similar to what I just put in the chat, Carrie Ann, you know, one of the most difficult pieces in remote learning is clearly that parents have had to take charge and responsibility of a lot of what's going at home. And I love that folks like you and Natasha, you've been making those connections with parents and communities before this even happened. And I could see schools learning from you and figuring out what kind of materials, what kind of instructions, what kind of mindsets are you helping parents gain, particularly in these times, that will help them with their kids. I'm not expecting them to teach the kid calculus, but if we have a hands-on activity and you've come up with a way for them to kind of painlessly assist, and if the mindset is assisting means I'm just going to watch and ask my child questions, that's great. That's a huge help to us as teachers, just that piece. So,
yes.
Thank you.
I appreciate that. And I have to just share with you is that one of the things that I really pride myself on is that, especially when I'm in the presence of whether it's a camera or whether I'm at a specific environment, that is where I can actually keep myself socially distanced but still work. I like the fact that sometimes parents jump in and they try to fix what the child's doing and the kid gets frustrated. I usually say to the parent, I said, I honestly have no idea what your child's making, but I'm sure it's 100% better than how you and I are thinking as an adult. So
True.
probably the best thing you and I can both do is just move around and walk around and watch someone else. Because sometimes when we see something not going correct, like how we might have learned how to do something, we jump in. And my goal is to, without really thinking it's a goal, is that when I'm working with kids, whether they're on the screen or they're in person, is to have parents step back and realize the child can do it, because preschool children can do it if you give them the opportunity, but it's best to be an active listener and an active observer versus jumping in and trying to do it your way, because I will tell you 100% of the time, they have better ideas than you or I as adults. And even with all my experience as a teacher, these kids are so innovative, which motivates me to want to continue to teach them the engineering design process, because these are young thinkers that have way more knowledge and way more exposure than you and I ever had in our lifetime.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's a huge confidence builder too, to give a specific challenge, and then when they figure it out on their own, that's building self-confidence and giving them a chance to like understand that they're an intelligent person, you know? So yeah, I love all of that.
Yes. And I did see a question that someone asked, what is the name of my business? It's the Learning Exchange Educational Consulting. And sometimes for me, schools approach me. They'll do it through Pride grants. They'll put forward the work. The teachers associations will put forward the work and filling out the information. I just did a virtual summer camp for 2 weeks for K-2 and then 3 to 6 over the summer. And we had tons of technology issues, but we found a way to make it work, because at that point, if you think about in August, when we had schools going on, you know, from let's say March until June, we weren't as knowledgeable as we are today as teachers and as parents about technology. So we were able to honestly navigate the kids and I, those that were on the screen, to success.
That's awesome. That's so great to hear, because how many times have all of us experienced tech issues in the last 8 months? It's crazy that, you know, it pops up and you just got to figure it out. We all have to just power through it and figure it out.
Yes.
Any other questions or any of our presenters before we kind of open things up a little bit? Okay, so if not, I do want us to kind of open it up and have a conversation and invite other attendees to share their thoughts. But first, I want to give a big thank you to all of our presenters. Say thank you for being here and for sharing your knowledge and experience. And we are going to turn off our recording.